Good day, everyone. I am your instructor in this subject, Forensic Photography or FOSC 1. So before we start, what could be the importance of photography in our lives as well as sa crime detection and crime prevention? So photography is an invaluable aid on crime prevention and as well as crime detection. So ginagamit siya hindi lamang ng law enforcement in solving crimes but also nagagamit din natin ang photography in our lives. Okay? Noong 1839, ito yung kino-consider natin na birth year of photography. Dito daw talaga yung taon na to, dito ipinanganak ang photography. So, napakadaming purposes ng photography sa buhay natin, sa different aspects of our lives. And on this subject, this subject is divided into two main topics. So, meron tayong tinatawag na technical photography and forensic photography. So, pag sinabi natin technical photography, dito yung mga technical concepts and principles ng photography, including yung mga characteristics of photographic rays, the uses of camera, lenses, filters, and the structure of the film, photographic papers, and of course, yung chemical processing na involved ang photography. So, yun yung under ng ating technical photography. Meanwhile, when we say forensic photography, it covers the investigative photography, kasabay dyan ang police photography, and then the preparation of mag files, and of course, the crime scene photography. So for this, midterm topics natin, we are more on focusing on the technical aspects of photography. And then, sa last part ng ating finals, dun natin i-discuss ang forensic photography. Okay? So, next, let's define photography. So, when we say photography, the term photography is coined by a British scientist, Surgeon Herschel, and it came from a Greek word, phos, which means light, and graphe or graphein, which means drawing or writing. So, literally, photography ay tinatawag natin na drawing with light. Kasi light, with the light itself, yun yung ginagamit natin to capture images, diba? So, kung walang light at dark ang buong paligid natin, then we cannot capture images, right? So, photography is defined as an art and science. So, bakit kaya siya tinawag na art and science? So, sinawag siya na art because it uses skills from the photographer itself. Hindi ka pwedeng basta-basta na lang mag-take ng pictures nang wala namang kinalaman sa kung ano yung situation o sa kung ano yung kailangan mong kuhaan ng photos. Right? Hindi ka dapat basta-basta kukuha. Baka mamaya niya, pag binasta-basta mo na lang yan, it could be blurred ang likod or blurred yung front. O kaya naman, may mga glitches tayong makikita doon sa ating image. So that's why photography is an art. Then why is it considered as a science? So tinatawag natin na science ang photography because it uses different methods or scientific methods for us to create an image and then transfer that image to become a picture or a photograph. So magkaiba, pag sinabi natin image, yan yung hindi pa natin napaprocess on hard film, on the film itself or on a photographic paper itself. Okay? Pag sinabi naman natin na photograph or the picture itself, yun na yung mismo nahawakan natin on a hard paper. So, photography is an art and science which deals with the reproduction of images. Of course, we are reproducing images through the action of light. So, i-discuss din natin yung kung ano ang importance ng light pagdating sa photography and kung ano yung different aspects and principles of light na nakaakibat ng forensic photography also. Through the action of light on a sensitized material. When we say sensitized material, we are discussing here the photographic film and the photographic paper. Before, di ba, nung wala pang digital cameras, wala pang mga DSLR and camera phones, ang ginagamit natin is yung mga film cameras, and then we are waiting for a week bago natin makita o bago natin mahawakan yung mismong picture na kinuhaan natin. Okay? So when we say sensitized materials, kasama dyan yung different processes, the chemical process on how and a photograph or on how a picture has been developed through the photographic film, and then ita-transfer yan sa photographic paper. Okay? With an aid of a camera, of course, hindi tayo makakuha ng image or makakapagpa-picture kung wala naman tayong camera and its accessories and the chemical process involved therein. Kung sa ating mga schools, meron tayong tinatawag na dark room. So, commonly, doon natin pinaprocess ang ating mga photographic film and photographic paper. But as of now, since tayo ay pandemic, then we cannot execute the chemical process or the dark room process involved in photography. Then, let's define police photography. So it is the science which deals with the study of the principles of photography. When we say principles of photography, we are talking here about the technical photography. So lahat ng technicalities pagdating sa photography, in application yan sa police photography, and of course the preparation of photographic evidence and its application to police work. So we are not just capturing images, we are not just reproducing images, but also we are capturing the scene, we are capturing what is the inside the scene, or kung ano talaga yung nung nais i-convey na message nung isang eksena in a certain place or in a certain area, right? Kasi when we are presenting sa court this kind of yung mga images na nakuha natin from the crime scene, the picture itself must convey meaning. Kailangan through that picture, maipakita mo what could be the relevance of that image o yung kinuhaan mo ng picture on the crime scene. The picture itself speaks for itself. Okay? So now, these are the principles of photography. So a photograph is the mechanical result of photography. It is the chemical and mechanical result of photography. Again, that is the photograph. Second, to reproduce a photograph, light is needed aside from sensitized materials. Third, lights reflected or radiated by a subject must reach the sensitized materials, while all other lights must be excluded. Hindi lahat ng lights ay applicable kapag tayo ay nagpa-process ng ating photograph. Kung nakakita na kayo or kung meron sa inyong idea pagdating sa dark room, we are using red light. Bakit hindi tayo gumagamit ng white light? Since ang white light kasi, ang film natin is very sensitive to white light. Once that the film was exposed to a white light, then magiging overexposed ang film natin kapag na-develop, o kaya naman magiging overexposed. May possibility na ma-damage yung ating image. That's why gumagamit lang tayo ng red light, since ang film ay hindi masyadong sensitive sa ating red light. So later on, we will discuss what are the components of this white light na tinatawag natin na to. Paano siya naka-apekto? How are we going to exclude the other lights from the white light itself? Or meron pa bang different lights aside from sa light na nakikita natin? Number 4, the exclusion of all unwanted and unnecessary lights is achieved by placing the sensitized material inside the camera. So yung kung natatandaan nyo before, yung mga parents nyo kung gumagamit ng film camera, agad-agad ay nilalagay yan inside the camera. Hindi yan ini-expose sa liwanag ng matagal kasi nasisira ang ating film. Fifth, the amount of light on sensitized material after exposure is not immediately visible to the naked eyes. Yung amount of light kasi natin na sinasabi dito is yung light na pumapasok inside the camera. Sa camera, meron tayong tinatawag na shutter. Yun yung nagko-control o yun yung opening kung saan nagko-control siya nung light na pumapasok inside the film. And kapag iyon ay matagal na naka-open, so magiging overexposed ang ating film. Kapag naman mabilis siya na nag-close and nag-open and nag-close, may possibility na medyo madilim yung ating image na makikita kasi konti lang yung lights na pumasok. So yung mga technicalities regarding with the camera, we will discuss that on our lesson 3, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? And to make the form image visible, it must undergo the development process. So hindi naman porque ay nakakuha na tayo ng camera, yung image ay nasa film na, so kailangan pa natin talagang i-process ang film para maging visible ang image. At the same time, the image itself on the film must also be processed and must be transferred on a photographic paper para naman yun na yung makita natin at maitatago talaga natin. 7. The visual effect that results from chemical processing is dependent on the quantity and quality of the exposing light. So, nakadepende sa kung gaano katagalan na expose yung ating film sa araw or sa light, kung yung quantity and quality ng ating pictures na makukuha. Kapag mas madaming light ang pumasok, then ang makikita natin na pictures ay more on a black shade, so madilim. Number 9, kapag naman konti lang yung liwanag na pumasok inside the camera, then ang napoproduce natin na image or na ating yung pictures natin ay more on white shade. Okay? The varying shade of gray will finally form the complete image. Now, these are the uses of photography in police work. First is for the identification. Pag sinabi natin identification, that is the very first use of photography in police work. Identification of criminals, missing persons, lost and stolen properties, and even identification of civilians. So that's why kapag kayo kinukuhaan ng pictures, then kasama na rin doon ang ating mga identities para if ever na tayo ay mawala, if ever na may mangyari sa atin, at least meron tayong pagkakakilanlan. Second, uses of photography in police work is the communication and microfilm files. Kasama dyan yung transmission of photos, it's either wire or digital or either radio. And second, through investigative report files. So kapag meron tayong mga files na medyo luma na, then we can take a photo of that para at least mape-preserve natin yung mga information on that file. Third is the evidence. It could be used as for recording and preserving of course, the crime scene. Kasama na dyan yung mga vehicular accidents, homicides or murder cases, the robbery cases, fires and arson cases, objects of evidence, and evidential traces. So this is an example of recording and preserving the crime scene. So gumagawa sila dito ng simulation on the crime scene that happened or that occurred on that place. So yan ay shooting incident. So tinuturo nila kung saan lumusot yung bala bago siya tumama sa victim. And ito naman yung reenactment kung paano natumba yung biktima o kung ano yung pwesto ng biktima nung siya ay natamaan nung bala. Okay, so another function as an evidence is by discovering and proving. So kasama dyan yung by contrast control. It could be on lighting, film and paper, and a filter. So, commonly, meron tayong mga ginagamit na different filters just to know or just to identify if a certain thing is either expired or not para we can see through doon sa original document. Kasi meron tayong mga documents na minsan ay tinatamper. So, with the use of a certain machines or certain paraphernalias, we can identify kung ano yung tinamper na yun or kung ano yung binago, kung ano yung pinalitan or pinatungan. Second is by magnification for us to see the depth ng ating mga pieces of evidence that we collected through photomicrography and photomacrography. And third, by invisible radiation with the use of infrared, ultraviolet, or X-ray if the specimen is not visible to the naked eye. Example, semen. Yung semen on a cloth or white cloth, you cannot visibly see the semen itself. Right? So, with the use of ultraviolet light, so once na pinadaanan natin siya ng ultraviolet light, then we can identify if a certain piece of cloth has a semen on it or wala. This one is an example of macro photography with transmitted light. So, more or less, didiscuss natin yung macro photography and yung transmitted light na yan later on. So, yan yung ating macro photography. Pag sinabi natin macro, again, how we are zooming in, mapinalalaki natin yung isang image for us to literally saw or para mas makita talaga natin yung meron dun sa image which is in question. So, yan yon, transmitted light. And ito naman with side lighting. Yung transmitted light ay yung ilaw, for example, ay kunyari, andito yung image, yung ilaw niya ay directly naandito. And then, yung camera ay naandito sa gilid para makuhaan talaga natin tong image na to. Yung side lighting naman, nasa gilid yung ilaw, nasa harap ang camera, at makikita natin dyan yung traces ng either yung pen pressure na ginamit. And may mga different traces tayo na makikita. And as you can see, anong kaibahan nung sa unang picture dito? Yung number 1, kung makikita nyo para siyang may kaskas. Number 2 and number 3. Another example is yung pictures na yan. So, nakita nyo, tinamper, pinatungan ng parang pentel pen or mas malaki, may mga matinta na ball pen, yung name ng customer and yung address. So, yan. Yan yung tawag natin na ink overwriting. So, mas mapapag-aralan nyo yan sa question document na subject nyo. So, hindi natin siya masyadong i-discuss dito. Okay? Okay, so with the use of macro photography with infrared film, we can see through kung ano ba yung pinatungan, kung ano ba yung binura. So, makikita nyo na dyan yung name ng customer as well as the address or the telephone number ng customer na yon. So, that's the use of photography. There's a lot of things na pwedeng paggamitan ng photography and with the different types of photography. This one is a polylight machine. Polylight machine is used by meron tayo yan sa ating NBI main, sa TAF. Meron yan different filters. Meron siyang different filters for a different colors ng filters. So yan, yung mga different filters, yung nandyan sa baba, yung mga bilog-bilog na yan. Again, ang machine na yan ay ang polylight. This one is an example of a sardines. It was a sardines manufactured sa ibang bansa na in-export, na in-import dito. And then it was confiscated by the customs and transferred to NBI for further investigation. And then yung nakalagay kasi dyan, yung best before and nakalagay is 2006. Okay? So, nung ginamitan natin ng polylight, makikita natin na pinatungan yung barcode. And yung yung original ay 2005 and 5 yung expiration. So, para lang maibenta pa yung mga sardinas na yan, pinatungan nila, pinalitan ng expiration date para mabenta pa. So, again, with the use of macro photography with polylight, we can see through the original documents or the original writings on a certain document. Kahit na iyan ay patungan mo, kahit na iyan ay talagang lagyan mo ng pentel or lagyan mo pa siya ng yung mga erasing liquid erasure. So, kahit na anong gawin mo, basta ma-preserve lang yung original document, malalaman natin kung ano talaga yung original information or yung mga original writings on that kind of document. So, mas pag-aaralan nyo yan sa question document. Another uses of photography in police work is the offender detection. So, ginagamit natin ang photography for surveillance, for burglary traps, confessions, and even reenactment. So, ito yung ating night vision photography. Number 5 is for court exhibits. Yung kasama dyan yung mga demonstrations of enlargement. So, meron tayong talagang standard enlargement or standard size of photos na ipepresent sa court. We will discuss that later on. The individual photos, projection, slides, and even motion pictures. Another uses of photography in police work is for reproduction and copying the photographs, of course, and the official records. And 7 is for personal training, yung training ng ating mga kapulisan, ng ating mga SOCO, ng ating NBI, and other law enforcement agencies for them to be prepared on how to use photography on their work. Next is the crime prevention and crime and fire prevention for mga hazards lectures para maipakita sa tao kung ano yung possible na pwedeng mangyari kapag nagkaroon ng sunog. We are presenting that through pictures of photographs. 9, of course, is for public relations para magkaroon tayo na hindi lang souvenir but also as an evidence or proof na talagang meron tayong inatenan na ganong klase ng seminars or ganong klase ng mga event. So, hindi lang siya for souvenir. Okay, moving on. We are now discussing the types of photography. First one is we have forensic photography. So, pag sinabi natin forensic photography, it is the process of photographing the crime scene or any other objects for court presentation. So, dito, we are now presenting what we have taken from the crime scene. Since we cannot bring the whole crime scene itself at ipepresent natin yan sa court, then ang gagawin na lang natin is we are just taking photos of the whole crime scene itself, and that photos already will convey a meaning sa court. Just make sure lang na yung kapag kumukuha tayo ng pictures, it does not appeal to the emotions of those lookers or dun sa mga titingin. Why? Bakit dapat hindi niya matatouch yung emotions nung isang piskal or nung ating judge? Kasi once na ganun ang mangyari, may possibility na yung kanyang decision sa kaso ay mai-impluwensyahan kasi maaawa siya. Kapag tayo ay magkukuha ng photo sa ating crime scene, make sure na we are taking photos fairly. Kailangan ay fair and we are not biased. Okay? So again, once that we are presenting na in court, then tinatawag na natin siya na forensic photography. So, we have the photomacrography. So, pag sinabi natin photomacrography, it is the photographing objects directly enlarged on the negative and magnified from 1 to 9 times. So, yung photomacrography, mas pinalalaki natin, ini-enlarge natin, minamagnified natin yung nakuha natin na image from the negative itself. Okay, so huwag kayong malilito. Pag sinabi naman natin na photomicrography, ito yung mga minute objects not visible from the naked eye. Hindi nakikita ng ating mga mata, but with the use of microscope, we can see these things. Nakikita natin. So once that once na in-enlarge natin, min-magnify natin itong mga image na to, doon papasok ang tinatawag natin na photomicrography. Okay? Then we have microphotography. It is a very small photograph as encountered in microfilming or with the use of microfilm. Do not be confused with the use of photomicrography and microphotography. So huwag kayo makakonfuse, magkaiba yan. Ang microphotography, it involves taking photographs on a very small film to produce small images that can be viewed when magnified. Okay? Whereas, yun namang ating tinatawag na photomicrography, it simply involves taking pictures or pagkuha ng photographs using a microscope. With the use of microscope. Ulitin ko, ang microphotography is the process through which the size of a photograph is reduced so that it can only be viewed using a microscope. Because yung technique na to, it allows for a significant reduction in the size of photographs. It has proved to be particularly beneficial for many libraries that are today using it for documentation. Okay, so next is the infrared photography. It is the art or process of photographing or recording unseen objects by means of infrared light. So, ang infrared natin, ang mga pictures na to na nakuha natin is sensitive to infrared light. It brings special effects like yung mga false colors in a simple portrait. So, as you can see on the sample image, yung isa, yung nasa baba, it creates a violet or purplish background. Okay? And then yung sa taas naman, more on grayish. Okay? So, the light that passes through the camera, but it blocks all or most of the visible light spectrum. Again, sa light kasi natin, yung white light natin, it composed of different colors. So, kapag infrared light ang ating ginamit or with the use of infrared photography, binablock niya yung ibang colors. Kaya naman, konti lang at either 1 or 2 colors lang yung nagpa-pass through and then yun yung nakikita natin na background o kaya naman yun yung nakikita natin na picture, na color ng ating picture. Kunyari, kapag sino sa inyo dito yung nag-try na ng yung ating mga cellophane, yung mga colored cellophane natin. So, kapag iyan ay ginamit natin, o kaya itinaas natin sa araw, nilagay natin sa mata, yung almost nagiging yellow lahat, di ba? Yung ating kapaligiran, yung nakikita natin. O kaya naman, kung red naman yung color ng cellophane, more on reddish din yung nakikita natin. So, ganun yung use ng ating infrared photography. Okay? Next is the ultraviolet photography. It is the art or process of photographing or recording unseen objects by means of ultraviolet lights or filter. Dito naman, we are using, or siguro nakita na kayo ng ultraviolet light na ginagamit sa pera. So, nakikita natin yung mga special features ng pera o ng isang document kapag gumagamit tayo ng ultraviolet light. So, nagiging visible, either nag-glow sila, nagiging bluish yung color ng mga special features na to. Okay? Next is spectrograph. A spectrograph is an instrument that separates light into a frequency spectrum and records the signal using a camera. So, sa spectrograph, it splits or disperses the light from an object into its component wavelength so that it could be recorded and analyzed. So, as you can see on our illustration, this one, ito yung ating light. It passes through an object and then on this object, so makikita nyo yung wavelengths natin o yung light natin, nag-travel siya, this one, and from this traveling of light, nung pumunta na siya rito sa object na to, kung makikita nyo ay na-disperse na yung ating lights o nag-split yung ibang light o yung ibang colors of light, ibang wavelength ay inabsorb ng object na to and then yung iba naman ay nag-bounce. So kung kaya makikita nyo, meron tayong violet, meron tayong red, kung saan yun na lang yung nag-send doon sa ibang objects. So spectrograph yun. Sinasala natin yung mga lights na hindi naman kailangan na i-record. And then next is the X-ray photography. Of course, the process of photographing or recording the internal structure of our body.